Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this presentation. My name is Caleb Roberson. I'm the Veteran Program Manager for Trinity Industries, headquartered in Dallas, Texas. What we're going to talk about today are basically some of the strategies that exist for implementing a veteran recruiting program at your organization. So you might be from companies and organizations from a wide variety of different industries. We're going to talk about customized approaches to implementing or even analyzing an existing veteran recruiting program in order to maximize it for the largest amount of return on your investment for the program, for your efforts, for the resources that you're going to invest in that program. A little bit of background on me, just for point of reference, before we get started. So I've been at Trinity since the summer of 2016. So about 8 months now I've been there heading up their veteran recruiting program. Prior to coming to Trinity, I managed a very similar program. I was the manager of military recruiting for BNSF Railway, which is a large Class 1 railroad headquartered in Fort Worth, Texas, with about 40,000 employees across the western U.S. During both of those times, I've continued to serve in the reserves. I'm currently a captain in the Marine Corps Reserves. I have cumulatively about 14 years total of military service between the Navy and the Marine Corps, the active duty side and the reserve side. So I say that just to make the point of, I know the military well. I've been in that organization for the better half of 2 decades. But on top of that, I've had a variety of experiences managing corporate veteran recruiting programs. So that's kind of where I'm coming from when I present this information and share with you my experiences, both from the military and from these two companies that I've helped manage recruiting programs for. Okay? So let's just dive right in. Over the last 10 to 15 years, you could say, a large number of companies of pretty impressive stature and size have undertaken efforts to implement veteran recruiting programs for their organizations. And that spans the spectrum of companies from pharmaceutical companies to logistics companies, manufacturing companies, you name it. And many others that I couldn't list on this screen. But they all have a common factor that they recognize that veterans have something that they want as far as potential employees. They recognize that they have a certain level of work ethic, a certain level of experience that makes them good employees, a certain level of drive, a certain level of, and depending on the position, a certain level of grit, and just hard work ethic. And they've identified them as, hey, this is a target audience that makes potential good employees for our organization. And we want to proceed with recruiting them as a targeted audience, and we're going to undertake efforts to do so. And it's not, I think it should be said that it's not a philanthropic endeavor, right? So they're not just doing this because it feels good or because it's the right thing to do, quote unquote, right? They're doing it from a business standpoint. Hey, we need maintenance technicians, and we know that skilled maintenance technicians exist in the military, and therefore it makes good sense to bring them into our organization. Or we need a trainable workforce, right? Maybe their specific technical background doesn't matter, but we need to know that they're okay being outside, and we're going to train them to get the rest of the way. And we need a lot of those folks. So in that instance, it makes good business sense to target the military as a source of folks to recruit. Okay. But nonetheless, we understand that right, recruiting veterans is a good endeavor from a business sense, but it's the how that gets sticky. It's the how does AstraZeneca do it, and should they do it the same way that Amazon does it? And should Amazon do it the same way Pepsi-Cola does it? These are companies on wide ends of the spectrum of types of businesses that exist. So would they undertake the same approach to veteran recruiting? Would each company take that same approach to veteran recruiting if they have largely different business strategies in whole, different talent acquisition strategies, and different target markets? And that's what we're going to talk about. Is how does your talent acquisition and current hiring needs kind of drive your specific approach to veteran recruiting, and how does that differ from your specific situation, and how is your approach going to be different based on your specific situation? Okay. So what does an effective veteran recruiting program look like? Okay. Well, for one, it's well synchronized with your current talent acquisition strategies and hiring needs. Right? You know what those are. You know how those exist as they are today. Right? And my job isn't to tell you that you should change your practices in order to hire more veterans, but rather take your current hiring practices and develop your veteran recruiting strategies based on that. So you're well synchronized. Effective programs are well synchronized with your current hiring practices and, like I said, aligned with your overall talent acquisition strategies. Taking an internal look and developing your program from there. These principles are equally applicable to companies of all sizes. So no matter if you're a micro company with 15 employees or whether you're a large multinational manufacturing firm with tens of thousands of employees across the U.S. and even across different countries. These same principles apply no matter size or scope or industry. And this is even applicable to organizations who maybe you have a maturing existing veteran program, but you want to reanalyze it and say, hey, are we taking the right approach to this? We want to increase the return on investment that we're seeing. We want to increase the impact of our veteran recruiting program. How can we kind of analyze our existing program to make sure that we're going in the right direction? Or maybe you're just simply interested in possibly implementing a program yourself and you've never had one within your organization. All right, so what is synchronization? When we talk about synchronization, well, what exactly am I looking for? What exactly are you looking for? Well, we're talking about targeting the right types of veterans based on your current needs. So, right, when you say the word veteran, what do we think about in general? I'm interested to kind of hear maybe different perspectives on what the word veteran means to some of you.
I think of my grandpa.
Think of your grandpa, so older generation, yeah. Maybe Korean War era, maybe even World War II era, a different time, a different generation. Like I said, that's one very good example of a veteran. Anybody else?
Fighting missions. I think of fighting missions.
Sure.
People that were battling someone.
Fighting missions, direct combat experience. What about age? When you say veteran, is there any specific age that you think of? You said grandpa, so we're thinking 60, 70 plus maybe. Are there younger veterans? Yeah. Right? So yeah, all ages, 22, 23, served 4 years, and now they're getting out for active duty. There's middle-aged veterans. There's veterans from each demographic that live in each location, that came from different skill sets, that did different things in the military, that had different experiences, both combat and non-combat related. Right? So I say that to make the point that when we talk about veterans, that's a large swath of people with a large variety of different backgrounds and experiences, and even technical skill sets. So targeting the right type of veterans within that larger scope of folks for your individual organization, again back to my original point, that's going to look different. The right type of veteran for your organization versus the right type of veteran for your organization versus the right type of veteran for your organization. Right? So identifying who that is. Right? When we say veteran, what type of veterans are best for us? Best for the specific positions that we have open that we're trying to fill, and for this talent acquisition problem that we're trying to solve. And once we've identified those right types of veterans, finding them in the right locations and engaging them in the right manners for the maximum amount of effect, right? So once we've identified who the right types are, well, where are they, and how can we effectively engage them, interact with them, talk with them, and ultimately get them to apply to our jobs that we're trying to fill. So again, right type, right location, right engagement. That's what it all kind of boils back to. Once you've looked internally and found those things, identifying who the right person is, where are they, and how to engage them. Okay, so what will synchronization, if I achieve this level of synchronization, what will that give me? What's the advantage to doing so? Well, it increases your ROI for your veteran recruiting efforts, right? So increased output, maybe with decreased input. And it increases your overall impact on your business. So what are those hard to fill locations and positions that you're looking to fill? With an effectively synchronized program, that can have the effect of filling those hard to fill positions that maybe other parts of the talent acquisition department weren't able to solve, right? But because you're well synchronized and you're attracting the right types of veterans and messaging and engaging them in the right way, you're able to actually have that concrete impact on the business. And having an improved employer brand. So if your message to veterans about why you want to hire them is well synchronized with the fact that they're actually competitive candidates for your positions and they're having a good experience when they're engaging with your recruiters and with your company and whole, then that's going to drive your employer brand. That's going to increase your employer brand. On the flip side, if you don't have, if your program isn't well synchronized with your current hiring practices, then you're going to have frustrated veteran applicants, which is going to actually diminish your employer brand possibly. And let me share with you an example. So if a company simply runs out and says, hey, we want all veterans. We're extremely veteran friendly, and we're targeting all veterans. All veterans we want to hire. But those same veterans that are getting that message on the front end are applying and maybe aren't being directed to specifically the right types of positions for them based on their skill set and their education, and they're not having any success in the application process. So they're being told on the front end that they're really good fits, but they're not getting anywhere with actually getting hired. That's going to create kind of a frustrated sequence of events where that specific veteran is going to say, hey, well, I was told on the front end one thing, but I experienced another thing on the back end. And that's going to create a population that can be frustrated. And in today's day and age, when you have instantaneous reviews on sites such as Glassdoor and Facebook and LinkedIn and Indeed, those veterans or anyone in that, for that matter, speak about their individual experiences, and that can kind of drive, again, your employer brand when people are leaving those reviews about their experiences with your company. Overall, diminished employer brand, kind of to that same point. All right, so let's kind of get down in the weeds. We've talked about what synchronization is and what it will achieve. We've talked about finding the right types of veterans and locations and how to engage them. So what are those things specifically? So the right types of veterans, when I think about veterans from a talent acquisition standpoint, who am I talking about, right? So when I'm just trying to solve a recruiting problem, and we're trying to solve it with an approach of let's recruit veterans, I'm thinking of two specific types of veterans. I'm thinking of A, those that are still serving or soon to separate from the military. Okay, these are the folks that probably are in about a 12-month window of getting out of the military. Right? Maybe they're 12 months out, maybe they're 12 days out, but nonetheless, they're about to separate and re-enter the civilian workforce. Maybe go to school, maybe go to tech school, maybe go to just start working in general. And these individuals are located on the numerous numbers of bases across the world. So this is your cousin in the Marines that's in Okinawa. This is your uncle that's in the Air Force that's serving in Air Force Base in Nebraska, whomever it is, and looking to exit, but they're not quite technically separated from the military just quite yet. If you're looking at possibly recruiting folks that are coming directly out of the military, right? So I think by default, when people say, hey, let's go recruit veterans, I think the by default answer is, well, let's go to the base. Let's recruit them right off the base. That makes the most sense. I would say before you implement that type of strategy, you're going to want to ask yourself a couple of different questions. Knowing that the types of folks that are on those bases, they might be staying around the local area, or maybe they're going back home. What are the skill sets that they're exiting the military with? So you're probably going to want to ask yourself a number of different questions. What locations am I trying to fill? Will these individuals that are exiting the military be willing to go to those locations that I'm trying to fill? Where are these positions? What skill sets are needed, and are those well synced with the type of skill sets that people are leaving the military with? So day one, removed from the military, do they already have the skill sets that are required for the positions I'm looking to fill? All right, so that's your first group. The second group, I'd say, is your separated and resettled veterans. So you got the folks that have not yet left. Now we're talking about the folks that have gotten out of the military, maybe 12 to 18 to 24, maybe even 5 years removed from the military. They're resettled back in their communities, right? They went back home to Tulsa. They went back home to Lincoln, Nebraska. They went back to wherever it is that they had kind of told themselves that they're going to go once they exit. They're back within the communities. They're resettled. They've gone to school. They've gone to college. They picked up a degree. They've gone to tech school and they pick up a welding certification, whatever it is. Maybe they're already working, and they're just progressing through their now civilian career following the military. Right. So why do I differentiate between these two types of folks when we're talking about, hey, let's go recruit veterans? These types of folks are going to have a different target focus than these types of folks, right? These are folks that are looking for their next career, right? They're standing at the exit door saying, I've completed my military time. What's next? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? These people are already halfway through that kind of conversation with themselves. I've already separated. I'm back home. I've gone to school. I'm well on my way of where I want to be post-military, right? So if you're a recruiter, if you're a veteran recruiting program manager, and you're looking for, okay, who's the best fit for my positions, these are probably going to be the main two types that you're going to want to take a look at. Asking yourself the same questions for that second group of folks. What locations am I trying to fill? Are they as willing to relocate to them? What skill sets are needed? And have they yet acquired them? All right, so once you've identified the right types of veterans, now you can move to, well, where are they located, right? And folks that are soon to separate, well, it makes the most sense that they're still on the military base, right? So we go back to that default answer of let's recruit veterans off of the bases. If you're looking for those soon to separate individuals, that's where they're going to be. So your 50 plus bases nationwide, many of which are large bases of 20 to 30,000 individuals, active duty individuals on them at any given day. And these are individuals from various job fields, and on base, on those installations, you have transition assistance centers that are going to help you. So if you're targeting these types of folks, again, making contact with the transition assistance centers and engaging veterans, again, on those bases, that's probably what's going to be your target objective. Additionally, you've got on-base job fairs, on-base advertising opportunities, focusing on magazines with heavy active duty circulation. You've got a lot of national military awards for companies, most military friendly, things like that, that you're probably going to want to focus on. And then social media targeting. So if social media advertising is a part of your overall talent acquisition strategy, then targeting folks on those bases, so the Fort Hoods and the Fort Polks and the large installations, but putting stuff in people's social media feeds, but targeting towards them when they're still on those bases. Otherwise, if you're looking at those resettled veterans who have already separated and back in the communities, well, how do you engage them and where do you find them? So you're going to want to look at your local veteran networks. Your local veteran employment offices are huge sources of this information. Career fairs focused on the local veteran population instead of career fairs that are more focused on the active duty population that are taking place on base. And then traditional career websites and databases with veteran filters. So Career Builder and Indeed and even LinkedIn have made this extremely simple. So you can go in and you can search for a very specific skill set in a very specific location, but then say, hey, I only want to look at the veterans that meet those criteria. And then it makes it really easy on a recruiter that's focused on veterans to find people that have the skill sets that you want, but that also happen to be veterans. So again, this is a huge source of information. All right, so we've kind of covered it, and it's a little bit detailed, but whether or not I want you to think back to your specific talent acquisition situation, right? What type of jobs do I have? Where are they located? Which ones of these types of veterans would best fit with the majority of the positions that I'm looking to fill, right? And if you're having trouble saying, well, Caleb, I don't really know what the best fit is, because maybe you're in a gray area, and I think a lot of times we live in a gray area. It's not necessarily, hey, it's all going to be folks that are soon to separate. It's not all going to be folks that are resettled. There might be a mix of the two based on the job. Who knows what your individual situation is? How do I kind of get started and get a feel for what might be the best fit for me? One of the best things that I did when I moved over to Trinity to get a feel for, okay, I've got a different situation now, how am I going to go about recruiting veterans, is to look at folks that have already been hired and happen to be veterans, right? So, okay, well, what does a successful veteran applicant look at my company? Well, let me go look at somebody who was hired. Let me go look at a number of people that were hired. So I know my hiring managers, they like them, they like their skill set, they like their education level, they like their experience, and these folks also happen to be veterans, right? So from there I can start to draw a picture of, okay, well, where did we find them? Where did they come from? What branch of service did they come from, and where exactly were they before they came to us, right? So that's going to paint a picture around the type of veteran that you're going to want to target, because that's what success looks like. You've already identified that. So again, did they come straight from the military? Did they spend some time elsewhere before they came to us? Did they acquire experience following the military? And again, where did you find them? Okay. So like I talked about earlier in the introduction, before coming to Trinity, I worked for one of the large Class 1 railroads, right? And ran a very similar program to the program that I ran at Trinity, basically focused on veteran recruiting. So now that I want to share with you my personal experience from managing a veteran hiring program at the railroad, and then we'll flip to managing a program at Trinity, and we'll kind of see the contrast on how the two different approaches might be applicable in each of the situations. Okay. All right, so some background real quick on hiring at the railroad. So a railroad, the bulk of the workforce are individuals called conductors, right? right? They basically move the trains from point A to point B without getting kind of too deep in the weeds. That's basically what they're responsible for. And so if your business is built around moving goods from point A to point B, then the folks that are responsible for moving those goods, they're going to be a large part of your workforce. You got to have those folks to actually, move the goods. So conductors are a unique bunch, because once they come to the railroad, then they go through pretty in-depth training, 10 to 13 weeks, and they become federally certified conductors. So they don't have to necessarily have specific skill sets or experience before coming to the railroad in order to be competitive candidates for that position. The three main things that that people need in order to be competitive are: they need to have experience operating around heavy equipment, operating heavy equipment itself or operating around heavy equipment. Doing so gives you a certain mindset, a safety mindset, keeping your head on a swivel per se, and being able to safely, like I said, maneuver around heavy equipment. So we look for folks with that type of background and experience. We also look for folks that are okay working in inclement weather for long periods of time, right? That's not something you necessarily go to school for, or you get a certification in. It's an experience that you have that you know you're okay doing so. Thirdly, you need to be okay traveling away from home for long periods of time, and that be okay with you, right? So again, not something you go to school for, but it's experientially based, right? You've done it before, you know you're okay with it, the family's okay with it. Those three things are indicators of a good candidate for a conductor, right? So it made good sense in that situation. If we knew we're looking for large amounts of folks that meet those criteria, again, we needed people that were going to relocate across the country, looking for a career change, that had related but not specific experience. So going back to the right type of veteran, in that situation, it was those folks that are soon to separate, looking at the exit door and saying to themselves, hey, I'm ready for a career change, and I might be open to a wide number of locations across the country. That made the best sense for us. Based on that, then we said, okay, well, if we know that those are the types of veterans we're after, then how are we going to find them and how are we going to engage them on base, whether it be job fairs or advertising, focusing on those magazines like we talked about earlier, the national awards and rankings, and social media targeting. Right? So that was our game plan. We took a look at our jobs. Hey, what type of jobs do we have to fill? Okay, got it. Conductors. Well, what type of veteran is the best fit for a conductor? It's a soon-to-be separated veteran that hadn't yet left. Okay, now that we know that, now what processes are we going to implement in order to attract and engage them? That was what we implemented in order to attract and engage our target audience. So where did it get us? In 2014, we hired 1,700, a little over 1,700 veterans in a 12-month period, which was a company record. And then in 2015, we did the exact same thing, except there we hit an all-time percentage high of 27% military hires in a 12-month period, right? So again, identify the right type of veteran, find the location where they are, and engage them in the right way, and we had success doing so using that methodology, okay? Now let's kind of flip back to a different situation, right? So I left the railroad and I came over to Trinity Industries. And if you look at Trinity Industries, you say, okay, well, heavy industrial manufacturing company. Similar to the railroad, right? Heavy machines. Heck, Trinity even makes rail cars. You would think that you would probably have a similar approach to veteran hiring as you did at the railroad, right? Because the two companies on their face appear to be similar. And that's what I thought. Full confession, I did too. I stepped in, I said, hey, I've done this before. I've managed military recruiting programs. This is a similar company on its face. So yeah, I'll just implement the same procedures and the same processes and we'll have success again. Why would it be any different? And then I soon learned that yes, it was a different problem altogether. No better, no different, but nonetheless, it took a different approach. So let me share with you the approach we took here, how it differed from what we did at the railroad and the results that we incurred. So Trinity, again, heavy industrial manufacturing. We make a lot of railroad stuff. That's the interesting thing, right? So tank cars, railroad parts and components, but we also have industrial propane tanks that we make, inland barges. Big steel industrial products is our core competency. Our workforce looks a lot like this. Highly skilled welders, highly skilled machine operators that are building the products that we sell to our customers, right? So these are the positions that I'm trying to fill here at Trinity. Industrial painters and blasters. And again, if you look at the two companies, you say, okay, they've got to be similar in approach. But when you think back to the types of people that we hire here, so think about these types of machines and this type of experience, and highly skilled welders that are used to manufacturing things. Those types of skill sets just don't, in large part, exist within the military, right? So nobody is stepping out of the military with these skill sets day one. They're accruing them afterwards, right, after the fact, but they're not leaving the military with these skill sets. So to then go back and implement that same strategy and go on the bases and try to recruit folks directly from the military, you're not going to have as much of a high-level result as you would otherwise. So what did we do here? We knew that we needed people that lived in the rural communities where our plants were located and that had specific experience within the manufacturing sector, operating those machines, 3 to 4 years of flux core welding, you name it. But you need specific experience in order to be competitive for a large number of the jobs. Now, we have other jobs that are good fits for people coming right out of the military. They do exist. But I'm talking about the bulk of the jobs, the ones that make up the largest percentage of the people that we hire on an annual basis. Because that's what you're really after when you're going after, hey, how can I have the biggest impact? You're chasing the big groups of jobs that you hire the most of. A lot of them have to have specific manufacturing experience and training. Based on that, based on the jobs that we identified, what types of veterans are the best in that situation? Well, it's the folks that got out, came back to Tulsa, went to weld school, and now they're experienced welders. They have the certification. They also happen to be veterans, so they have that added experience. On top of that, they have the work ethic and they have everything, all the reasons why we target veterans in the first place. But now they have the skill sets and the experience that we actually need for them to be competitive candidates for our positions. Based on that, what are the right locations and methods of engagement? So just exactly what we talked about earlier. Local veteran networks, local veteran employment offices, career fairs focused on local veterans in the local community, etc. and so forth. And then again, targeting them on those traditional career sites. Because now they're civilians, right? Now they're just like you and I. And they're on Career Builder, and they're on LinkedIn, and they're on Indeed, and they're just looking for their next position. So being able to find those folks, separate them from veterans and non-vets, being able to target in on the veterans who have the skill sets that you need, engaging them and recruiting them and attracting them. So a little bit more on our social media efforts, just because we're proud of them. In addition to just simply getting in front of veterans on social media, some of the things that we do is we let veterans know that we have a specific program dedicated towards the recruitment of folks like them. Right? Not all companies do. So the fact that we do gives us a competitive advantage. In addition to that, we let people know who our veteran recruiter is. We're very public about it, not only in pictures but in contact information, and encouraging veterans who are interested in Trinity to reach out and contact us, contact me, and let's have a personal conversation about what job is the best one for you at Trinity Industries. Right? In addition to that, we're very active on LinkedIn. So veterans, just statistically, are extremely active on LinkedIn. And it just makes sense. They're constantly transitioning out of the military and moving on to the civilian workforce. So LinkedIn makes sense for them. So we're engaging them in a way that doesn't necessarily sell our jobs to them all the time, but gives them meaningful content to help them navigate that transition from the military to the civilian sector. And in doing so, we build a relationship with them, and we're a credible source to them once they separate. We talked about community-focused job fairs. So these are some of our partner organizations that we work with that put us in contact with those folks that we're targeting. Again, separated and resettled. Recruit Military does a really good job of having job fairs in the local communities, larger metropolitan areas usually, but within the local communities, not on the basis. Same thing can be said for Hire Our Heroes, and then the Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Program, which is a much smaller program, but focuses on reservists and National Guardsmen who have been deployed and are returning back home to those local communities where they live and work as civilians, in addition to their reserve duties. All right, so what did it get us when we, as far as that strategy is concerned at Trinity? So an interesting kind of data point for you to look at. In 2016, so I said that I joined in June of 2016. So right in the middle of these two data points is when I started at Trinity. And before I joined, the program largely focused on those active duty soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, right? Those active duty veterans was a larger component of their strategy prior to my joining. And when I got there, we slightly pivoted towards focusing more on those resettled veterans. So you'll see Q1, we did about 8.7% was the percentage of veterans that we hired between January and March. Q4, after we had kind of fully pivoted our strategy, we achieved a 12.19 veteran recruiting percentage, which was about a 40% increase, again with that change in strategy coming right in the middle. So we experienced a 40% increase in the number and the percentage of veterans that we hired quarter over quarter, just comparing the two strategies, right? So it's demonstrated that the success was there. The numbers were there to support the shift in strategy. Interestingly enough, though, if you look at the expenses incurred as part of those two strategies, so in Q1, here were the expenses as part of the program. In Q4, they were reduced by about 85%. So if you got a 40% increase in productivity and 85% reduction in cost, that usually indicates a pretty good shift in strategy. So that's what we were able to do over the past 6-7 months at Trinity. All right, so let's summarize a little bit. So again, going back to synchronization and how to achieve it and identify it. Finding the right types of veterans based on your organizational needs. Again, looking at your specific jobs and saying, okay, well, what's the right type of veteran for these jobs? Where do they live? How do we engage them? How do we attract them? And how do we recruit them? Biggest nugget of information, if you leave with nothing else, I would say looking at resumes of veterans who are already hired and understanding what success already looks like. It was a big turning point in my understanding of how to best recruit veterans at different companies. So I would share that nugget of information with you to take away and to use that as a tool to better understand what your target audience should look like. And then, again, it sounds simple, but base your strategy on what makes sense for your organization. In doing so, you'll experience increased results and hopefully a reduced amount of expenditure.